Hello students, today we're going to be going through the study guide for our forest unit. Let's get right to work. Number 1, why are some leaves waxy and needle-like in shape? Can you tell me what forest those are probably in? You're right, carnivorous, in the carnivorous forest. Whoops, let me get the whole answer. To prevent water loss. Number 2, why are some leaves broad and flat, giving a large surface area? And that's to absorb light. To absorb light. Let me move this up. Number 3, what can increase erosion in a forest biome? Everybody should know this. Deforestation, or the cutting down of trees. Number 4, what type of leaves would increase photosynthesis? And by that I mean it means what shape or description of leaves would increase photosynthesis. And it would be a plant with long, wide, broad, flat, a lot of surface area. Okay? Or you can just write long, wide leaves. Number 5, give an example of secondary succession and how it would affect a forest. Remember, secondary is when the forest has already had a climax community and then something happens to it, some kind of natural disaster, and it has to start over, but it still has dirt. So let's take a look what we have here. It might be where a forest fire burns down the trees, then the grasses become the dominant species for a while. The grass is kind of like the pioneer species, and then the shrubs and saplings start growing, and it might take years and years to get back to the climax community. All right, move up just a little bit. Okay, number 6. Why do so many species of plants grow in the rainforest even though the soil is acidic and poor in nutrients? This was on our Just the Facts. Heat and humidity decay dead organisms quickly so that nutrients are available for plants. Because decomposition is fast, the plants are able to get the nutrients before everything gets washed away. Okay, number 7, there's 2 questions. If you look at this chart, it says spring rainfall and the number of frogs. There's the number of frogs in the pond, the amount of the rainfall in centimeters. It says what happens to the number of species over time according to the graph? Well, you can see here it goes up, it's increasing, and then once it hits about 20, it's not increasing as much. It's kind of leveling off. So after 20 centimeters, the number of frogs levels off. See, it was increasing, and then it's going up a little, but not very much. It kind of levels off. And the second part of that question says, what is the difference between the number of frogs in the pond when the rainfall was 5 centimeters and when it was 20? So at 5 centimeters, it's 20 frogs. At 20 centimeters, it's 60 frogs. So the answer to that, whoops. Well, what happened? So the difference between between 20 and 60, I'm just going to have to type it in here, is 40 frogs. And I don't know why, oops, I don't know why that happened, but this is really the answer for number 1. This is the answer for number 2. But I'm going to go on. Okay, pause it here if you need to get 6 and 7, but I'm going to move down to the next one here in just a moment. All right, so number 8. What usually happens in a food chain if the producer is removed? The producer are the plants. They produce all their own energy using the sun. So if all the producers are gone, then the consumers are going to decrease because there's not going to be anything, at least for the herbivores to eat. And if the herbivores die, there's not going to be anything for the carnivores to eat. So overall, the consumers will decrease. Number 9, what usually happens in a food chain if the producer is increased? Well, you could probably figure that out, that if we have a lot more producers, we're going to end up with a lot more consumers. 10, what would happen if there were multiple carnivores but fewer herbivores? So we've got lots of animals that eat meat, but not very many that eat plants. What would happen? Let's see. Plants would increase, and the carnivores would have to compete for the herbivores. There's not very many of the plant-eating animals, so the carnivores are going to be competing for them to eat them, and so there'd be fewer herbivores, and then since there'd be increased competition, there'd also be fewer carnivores. Okay, let's look down at number 11. This is a dichotomous key. Okay, let's take a look, see if we can identify bird A. Let's look at bird A. It says we're going to be looking at if it has webbed toes or not, and webbed is when they're connected together, and if there's 4 or 3, if there's curved claws or not curved claws, and if the claws are large or small. Okay, so let's look at bird A here. Bird A, 1A says the toes are webbed. Webbed is where the toes are connected. No, they're not connected here. So we're going to go to 3. It says claws are curved. Yes, the claws are curved, so it says go to 4. The claws are large or small. Well, here we're going to see some small ones, so we're going to call these the large one. So this bird A must be, oops, bird A must be the eagle. There you go. Let's look at bird B. See if you can figure this out first. Tell you what, I'm going to stop the video, work through this, and see if you can get B, C, and D. You will have a test question where you have to do this. So stop the video now, have everybody work on these, and then turn it back on. Okay, now you're back. I'm going to give you the answers to these. If you did not get these answers, go back and check how you did this. Pause it now if you need to write those down, but you should already have them written down. All right. 12. How do decaying trees contribute to the health of a forest? By providing nutrients to the other living organisms. 13. What is natural selection? It's when an organism that has the best traits survives in order to reproduce. Nature just sort of selects who gets to live and who's not going to live based on the traits that they have, if it helps it survive and pass on the traits to its offspring. 14. Sloths that live on the forest floor will eventually be eaten by predators. Sloths that move into trees will survive. What's that called? We just talked about it. Natural selection. What catastrophic events would cause lower temperatures and slower rates of plant growth over the world? Well, you could have a cloud of ash from volcanoes or a forest fire that blocks out the sun for months. So if the sun is blocked by the ash in the atmosphere, the temperature is going to be lower because they're not going to get the heat from the sun, and the plant growth is going to be reduced. Pause it here if you need to. Alright, characteristics of plants in each of these. You should definitely know this by now from just the facts. I'm going to move on. Pause this if you need to write these down. Rainforests have leaves with drip tips. Vines climb trees to reach the sunlight, and there's a dense canopy. Deciduous loses the leaves in the fall to preserve water. And Carnivores has needle-like leaves. Photosynthesis even in the winter. but the needle-like leaves preserve the moisture, save the moisture. 17, what structure in the plant carries nutrients from the leaves? Oh, we haven't talked about this in a while, but you should know this from our last unit. Then what structure carries water from the roots? You should know these. Xylem is the water tube, goes up. Phloem is the food tube, goes down. Number 18, what are the stages in primary? Oh, I'm going to pause it if you need to get these two because I'm going to move on. Okay, the stages in primary succession. We had a workshop on this. Here's the stages. And here's a couple of different drawings of these. The first one is exposed rock, and then you're going to have some soil, maybe some shrubs, a little bit of trees, and then eventually you get to the last stage, and it says here, what is the last stage? That's called climax community. You need to make sure that you know that. So pause it here so you can draw these. These are two different. You don't need to draw both of them, but one or the other, and draw these. Pause it here if you need to. Number 19, what is a common ancestor? An extinct organism that is an ancestor ancestor of two different organisms that are on a family tree. Pardon me. 20, how could natural selection cause different characteristics to emerge? If there's a characteristic that allows an organism to survive and reproduce, then it's going to be more dominant as the generations pass. Example, Arctic hares that are white in winter or live in areas where they can camouflage are more likely to survive and reproduce than ones that are brown. All right, physical adaptations that allow birds to flight. Those are called adaptations of flight. We talked about these. Wings, feathers, hollow bones, streamlined appearance. Those of you that know about cars know what that is. And the last question, I guess I can lower this. The last question, why are many houseplants originally from a tropical rainforest? We also talked about this. Let's see. Oops, I'm not sure why it looks like this. They are adapted to low light conditions in a rainforest, similar to low light conditions found inside houses. That's why they make excellent houseplants. They are adapted to low light conditions because the plants in the rainforest, except for the very tallest of trees, have to compete for the sunlight because the canopy blocks a lot of the sunlight, or most of the sunlight, to the forest floor. All right, that looks like that was the last one. Remember, you can watch this as many times as you need to. Save this. You're going to turn it in the day that you take the test. And this should help you prepare as well as reviewing your research chart, your project notes, your science notebook, especially including your science just the facts, and your vocabulary. All right, that's it.